Shabbat Shalom, everyone. School starts on Monday for my kids, so allow me to publicly say hallelujah. Hallelujah. I want to give a special shout out to the Eleanor Kolitz Hebrew Language Academy. Thank you for taking my kids, because I'm starting to go a little crazy here. We have 3 boys in our home, and I'm telling you that with all sincerity, we're really not messy people. We try to pick up after ourselves. We even have people that come over every once in a while to help us clean. But with 3 boys, it just always looks like a crime scene in our house. Looks like someone just threw a grenade in our living room, and when it exploded, Lego pieces and action figures and dirty underwear just went everywhere. And for some reason, there's always a child in my home who's just running around not wearing clothing. This is terrible. They're always fighting over something dumb. Someone's always hurt. Friends, I need them in school, because if not, they're going to have to go home and live with one of you, because I can't do it anymore. If you have social media, you know that school is starting, because all the moms are starting to post first day of school photos. The thing I love about back to school photos is that the whole process is typically implemented and sustained by mothers and daughters, and the dads and sons either take no part or just look miserable the whole time. If you look at these pictures that they're posting of kids on the first day, you'll see the girls posing. Usually they have like this sign that her mom made, and it says like first day of 7th grade, and she's like smiling and doing this little head tilt. But if you see a picture of a 7th grade boy, he's just looking aimlessly. Sometimes his parents threaten him to smile, so he has this awkward smirk thing. If there's one thing I know, it's that since the dawn of time, Texas mothers love taking 2 types of photos. There's back-to-school pictures in the fall, and then in the springtime, there's pictures in the bluebonnet fields. You're always going to see that. My mom would make us wake up extra early on the first day of school, and she would make us breakfast, and there would be entirely too much food on the first day. She'd make us eat it, and she'd shout, "It's brain food, you have to eat it." And we'd get dressed because she had already picked out our outfits, and then we were marched outside with bayonets to pose for these first day of school photos. And my mom would get so excited for this that sometimes, this is not an exaggeration, sometimes the sun was not even up yet when we were outside taking these. Kids nowadays are lucky that moms have iPhones and they can look at the pictures they've just taken, because when we had to use film back then, my mom would take about 3 million photos. And then my mom would bring my dad outside too, usually while he was still in his bathrobe. And my dad, who likewise hated this process, his job would be to keep us in line while we did this mandatory thing that we didn't like. And he thought the best way to do this was to shout at us while we were taking photos. So while my mom is taking photos, he's screaming in his bathrobe on the front lawn, "Smile for your mother! Quit smirking! Quit poking your brother!" And then my dad would do this thing after the pictures were finally over. He'd motion for us, the boys, to come over him, and he'd take out his wallet that he had in his bathrobe for some reason, and give us each some lunch money. And then phase 2 of this terrible process would begin, the Evan Hodson back-to-school pep talk. Each one of us would get a personalized speech that was curtailed to what grade we were going into. And just to make sure we felt special, my dad liked to remind us of how we had messed up in school the prior year. So for instance, he'd hand my eldest brother $5 and he'd say, "Jason, you're gonna be a senior in high school. You need to pay attention in class. Stay away from that idiot kid named Chad. You hung out with him last year and he was a moron." And that'd be the entire speech. Next brother would step right up. James, you're going to be a freshman. Don't let him haze you. Punch him in the nose if the older kids pick on you. Don't lose your glasses. Last year you lost your glasses on the first day of school and they were expensive to replace. I'm not buying any more glasses. That'd be his speech. Then he'd look at me and he would just sigh. Jonathan, you're not the class clown. You want to clown around? You want to clown around? You can come to my office with me. You can clown around. I'll be the ringleader. You want that? I didn't think so. And give me my money. And as I'm walking away, he'd say, oh, and don't make your mother upset. And that was my back to school speech. And then he'd look at all of us and say, be nice to the new kids. Then he'd just go inside. He said his piece. He was done. I think we can understand the book of Deuteronomy, and specifically this week's Parshat, Devarim. I think we can understand it much better if we think of it as Moses' back-to-school speech to the Israelites. Like my dad during the photos, Moses in the book of Devarim, he's tired. He's physically tired. Keep in mind, he's 120 years old. They've been wandering for a long time, but he's also mentally and emotionally and spiritually just tired. He's listened to the Jews complain now over the course of several books of the Torah. They kvetch about the food, the water, and his leadership. And he's also argued with God a number of times. And God has straight up told him that he won't even get to see the land that he's leading the people to. And so really, the whole book of Deuteronomy is his final speech to the people. And like my dad's back-to-school pep talk, a lot of the content of his speech is Moses just reminding the people of how they've messed up in the past. It's interesting, while you're reading what Moses is saying to them, the whole time you're wondering, is this supposed to be motivating? Most of the content of his speeches is Moses saying, I told you what to do before, and you didn't do it because you're a stiff-necked people. So a lot of you died. That's most of the speech he's giving. And I imagine Moses saying this in his bathrobe while he's talking. But then, just like my dad's random last line, that be nice to the new kids, Moses throws in an interesting verse. He says, this is a quote from the Torah, quote, hear the disputes between the people and judge them fairly, whether the case is between two Israelites or between an Israelite and a foreigner residing among you. Now, this is a fascinating idea because Moses is advocating that foreigners and Israelites have an equal status when it comes to adjudicating cases. He says you can't show partiality to the Jew just because he's one of your own. No, rather, you must treat everyone equally. This is Moses saying, essentially, be nice to the new kids. Friends, the reason that this sentiment is so timeless is because it's good advice. And I think it's important advice. Whether you're starting the 5th grade, whether you're starting a career, or even if you're just going about your normal routine business, it's important to remember that every human being is made in the image of God, B'Tselem Elohim, and therefore everyone deserves your integrity and your respect. Even if you're old, even if you're tired, even if you don't want to. Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the Jewish calendar, begins Monday nights, and it acknowledges the destruction of the Jewish temples, amongst other sad things on the calendar. And the sages say that these tragedies could have been prevented if only we would have worked together. Maybe if we were nice to the other kids. Just maybe, they say, we could have avoided tragedy. But because we couldn't or wouldn't see the humanity in others, disaster ensued. I'll conclude by saying that last year, on the first day of school. I don't remember planning this. I don't remember exactly how or why it happened. Maybe it just happened organically. But I found myself outside with my kids while my wife was taking pictures of them. And nobody handed me a script, but somehow I was the dad on the sideline saying, "Smile, be nice to your brother," the whole classic trope. And then I even found myself distributing lunch money and giving advice. Be nice to your teacher. Be nice to the new kids, yada, yada. I suppose these things are cyclical. They go from one generation to the next, l'dor v'dor. But I want to say something very important, and please hear me. Even though I did this, I was wearing significantly more clothing than just a bathrobe outside. Shabbat shalom.